That's good, everybody. This is the Folt, bringing to you live everything that you need to know about Chapter 5, Season 2, Missing Mortals. Fun stuff we got going on here, eh? Big things we need to talk about. We need to talk about what's changed from the last season, where are we at with this story, where are we at with the weapons, things that have changed, bosses, medallion abilities, new items, items that are gone, everything. Everything. So as we continue on with this video, you'll be able to enjoy a nice little victory royale at the end, so you might as well stay tuned while you're listening to see what you need to know for the next season. Here we go. First things first, we need to know what do we have that is new. So new things that we've got. One of the first guns that we got is the DMR, the Huntress DMR. This one is kind of like the Enforcer from what we've had the last season. And that weapon was later introduced, supposed to be the in-between between the sniper and the Nemesis AR. Pretty slow firing rate, semi-automatic, known as a designated marksman rifle. It's supposed to be in between that range. You're going to have quite a bit of recoil, kind of like what we had with the Enforcer. Anytime you get weapon modifications, best recommendation is just to go ahead and see if you can get any upgrades to reduce the recoil and kickback. Another gun on the list is going to be the Gatekeeper shotgun. Gatekeeper shotgun, what's special about that one is that it is kind of like a drum gun or the Frenzy Auto, except that it's only got 3 automatic shots and then a reload, and is that it does have a little bit more kick than what the Frenzy Auto would have. To be a great weapon to use if, say, you're getting a really great close range fight, or you're just finishing off and you just need 1 or 2 shots to do it, then Gatekeeper shotgun is going to be your go-to. Now personally, I still do enjoy the Frenzy Auto because it's just quite a bit of shots that can help back you up just in case you miss 1 or 2. With the Gatekeeper shotgun, you really need to be accurate, hitting at your shots every time if you want anything to really count. Otherwise, you might end up going back to the lobby sooner than you thought. Next weapon that we got is going to be called the Warforged Assault Rifle. Now this one, it's basically a striker AR. To me, there wasn't really much difference with the gameplay using it. There's not much difference. There really isn't. It's just a different name. Another gun we got is the Harbinger SMG. It's basically your Hyper SMG from the last season. It's your quick firing rate SMG as compared to, say, the Thunderburst that goes 3 bullets at a time. Harbinger SMG is just your Hyper SMG. Your Huntress DMR, it's an Enforcer AR, just a lot slower, but a little bit extra power on every shot, does more damage. Your Gatekeeper shotgun, kind of your in-between of your Hammer Pump and your Frenzy Auto, doing a little bit extra damage per shot. It's only got 3 rounds at a time for your Gatekeeper. Some rumors of guns that may be coming up later is going to be Midas's drum gun, a regular drum gun, a hand cannon, and an impulse grenade. So we're going to see if those end up being unvaulted for this new season, whether these rumors end up being true or they just happen to just be simple rumors. Let's move on now to our map. So big changes that we got to the map. We no longer have Ritzy Rivera or Hazy Hillside. Those have been replaced with the new season's locations and POIs. These areas are going to be where you face your bosses. Now these ones are going to be called the Underworld and the Grim Gate, where you're going to face the likes of Hades and Cerberus, and that's going to be up in the northwest corner, replacing the Ritzy Rivera, that area. And then down the southeast is where you're going to have Mount Olympus and the Brawlers Battleground. So right there, you're going to have the likes of Zeus and Ares as the bosses that you face. Other than that, the entire map is all the same. We still got Snooty Steps, Pleasant Piazza, Fencing Fields, and then the reels, instead of being Ruin Reels, they made it as the Restored Reels. So fun little touch on that. You still got Lavish Lair, Rebel's Roost, Classy Courts, Reckless Railways, and Grand Glacier. So you got most of the same POIs from the last season. You just change it Ritzy Rivera, replace it with the bad guys of the Greek mythology, and Hazy Hillside, big areas, all replaced with the good guys in the Greek mythology, even though personally Zeus was kind of a poop. What's going to be nice about this is that it'll be a decent transition for everybody going into the new season, so they can have lots of locations that they're pretty familiar with, while at the same time being decently comfortable enough to open up to new POIs for potential later drops in future games or whatever it may be. Now, fun thing to note about all the areas like Snooty Stacks where you have Peter Griffin, Fencing Fields with Nisha, Reckless Railways with Valeria, the vaults are completely abandoned. The vaults, when you go down, you'll notice that all the vaults are open. There's hardly anything in there at all. Just a few things of gold and a few ammo boxes here and there. But other than that, it is completely empty and abandoned. No enemies there. It's just a spot where you can actually just go in and not have to worry about a boss fight or anything. All that is all just going to be located in your northwest and southeast corners. I think what was fun about that too is it felt like I could just reminisce and look back on the past season of how much effort it took to get into that vault, and now I look at it, it's like everyone just moved out. I thought that was a fun touch. And speaking of the vaults, we had our weapon mod benches. Now, what's interesting for this season is that that's not one where you have to open up the vault and then you get to unlock it. So the weapon mod benches actually open up mid-game. So you'll see later in this video, I'll end up going to a mod bench that ends up opening all on its own without any key card or anything like that. And essentially you got all the same mods as from the last season, but the big difference is going to be one of the scopes, which is the 2.0 scope that you had from last season. That one is actually now going to be a thermal scope. So with the thermal scope, that one you can be able to see behind some rocks within distance, and you can see body movement and warmth. It's pretty helpful if, say, you need to find hidden enemies, but that's only with the 2.1 times scope. Now that one, what's really nice too is that you can turn it on and off as to whether you want the thermal on or off. With that said, that is the only size scope that does the thermal. 1.15, the red eye, the hollow scope 1.3, the eagle eye 4x scope. None of those are going to have the thermal. Depending on what you want to use, I'd recommend probably a sniper rifle or one of your other assault rifles, perhaps a Nemesis AR, or you'd want to work at 2.1 with thermal. Another unique mod that is now part of the game is a speed foregrip. So it's not necessarily the angle foregrip where you end up aiming down sight ADS quickly. It's more of a, as you have aim down sight, you're able to move with some extra speed as you're walking around or aiming around, whatever it may be. Essentially, you can move faster as you have the ADS down line, which is going to be definitely helpful when you're in a bit of a tough situation. You just need to move fast. You know how it goes. Just thermal scope and the speed grip are the new weapon mods. Other than that, everything else is just about the same. The thing we got to talk about is what it's going to be like facing all these bosses for the new season. So with our bosses being Zeus, Hades, Ares, and Cerberus, we're going to get some different medallions that they reward as you defeat them. In comparison with our Chapter 5 Season 1 bosses giving just a shield regeneration, these ones provide different abilities. So if you defeat Zeus, you get a little bit of a speed boost, so as you're sprinting, you can jump higher and run faster. If you defeat Ares, you get to increase how much damage is dealt as you deal damage. Now with Cerberus, you get a dash movement. As you're running, you get to have a really quick sprint. Essentially, it's like you're teleporting. Seeing other players using it, pretty hard to hit, because you never know if that's the medallion that they have unless they try it out, and it's pretty hard to hit. And finally with Hades, you have the ability to heal when you eliminate a player, or as they call it, giving siphon. So what's nice about this is if, say, you had a pretty difficult 101 and you took some damage, then it could help to heal you up. Definitely different from the medallions that we had before of just shield. It's of course same as last season where it gives away your location, and the more medallions you have, then the more precise that your location is going to be. If you end up getting all four, you get to have all the abilities, but everyone is going to see exactly where you are, making you a pretty difficult target. Now, the mythics that you get as you defeat every enemy, every single one, just like the last season, like Peter Griffin had a hammer pump, Nisha had the Striker AR, Montague had the Nemesis AR, Valeria had the Hyper SMG, and Oscar had the Frenziato. So with this season, you will get from Zeus Mythic Huntress DMR. From Ares, you get a Mythic Warforged Assault Rifle. With Cerberus, you would get a Mythic Gatekeeper Shotgun. And with Hades, you'll get a Mythic Harbinger SMG. A little bit similar to the other enemies that we had from the past season, like Nisha having the Striker AR, that's Ares. The Nemesis, kind of Zeus, although it's more of an enforcer. With Cerberus, Gatekeeper Shotgun, so kind of like Oscar's Frenziato. And then Hades Harbinger SMG, essentially similar to Valeria's Hyper SMG. Definitely deal lots of damage, can take care of enemies pretty quick with a good aim. Adequate, even slightly below with the high damage that they can deal. Get some decent body shots and headshot, and then you're good to go. You're going down. How different things that aren't exactly weapons, or they are weapons, but not really guns, are going to be your Chug Splashes, which is a new heal that they have added now. They still have the Flowberry Fizz, of course. Other than that, they've decided to add in the Chug Splash as a little extra heal item. And for some reason, they decided to take out bananas as a food item and replace it with Chug Splashes. The next thing that we've got is the Thunderbolt of Zeus, which is a brand new mythic ability, whereas you have these lightning bolts, you're able to raise up in the air and throw down 3 mighty bolts of lightning down at your enemies down on the ground. Now, difficult thing with this, as I tried it out, is that you're more likely than not just going to stand in the same spot, which can make it pretty easy for enemies to fight and defeat you. But at the same time, they may be distracted with lightning bolts that you're throwing down, trying to avoid getting hit by them, because they can deal quite a bit of damage if they're hit pretty dead on. Another thing that we've got is going to be called the Wings of Icarus. I've never known how to pronounce that name. Icarus or Icarus, I don't know. Someone help me out in the comments. With this, I would say is a pretty decent replacement for a mobility item. You'll see later on in the match, I actually end up picking up the wings and actually decide to get rid of my shockwave grenades. Now, the thing I love about the wings, for one, there's a little dive bomb attack you can do as you're falling down from the sky, and you can get a pretty decent first hit on an enemy and maybe have an advantage in a fight. But the biggest thing that I love about it is the fact you just fly up right in the air. You just go up right in the air and you can just coast along, and I think it's great if you're able to move from zone to zone using it. Now, you do have to be careful. It's like how the grapple blade, which is gone from this season, by the way. I love the grapple blade, both mobility and an attack melee item, but it sucks to not have the grapple blade anymore. But similar to that, it does have a limit of how many times you can use it at a time for the grapple blade, and versus the wings, as you land, you do also have a bit of recharge time, so only like 5 or 6 seconds before you can use the wings again. However, the big difference with the wings is kind of the mix of the grapple blade, having to wait before you can wait again, and then a shockwave where once you use it, it's gone. So the wings give you 300 seconds or something like that. I think the seconds do count kind of fast, but it does give you a certain limited amount of time of how much you can use the wings as you're flying before you gotta land. I think it only does 100 at a time. The difficult thing is that if someone is able to shoot you, you start to fall down and plummet down to the ground. Definitely be wise on when you decide to use the wings and trying to avoid any enemy attacks. But other than that, I think it's a pretty good mobility item and can give you a decent head start if you're able to bomb down just right on somebody. Okay, so now that we've covered our POIs, brand new POIs on the map, we've covered the different mythic weapons, we've covered the bosses, and now when it comes to fighting the bosses, what's a little bit different is that it's more of a challenge. Rather than the enemies just deciding to start fighting you as soon as they notice you, it's actually more of a challenge. So you knock down this little statue thing that's in front of them, and they see that as a challenge, and then they start sending the little minions and people to start fighting you. And then you finally start to fight the final boss. Now, with say Zeus or Hades being your final boss, they're more as the one that you fight last rather than fighting throughout the time, as opposed to last season where you're fighting both the boss at the same time as well as the minions, like the whole time throughout. Now, with these bosses, it's more of a you fight all the minions first and then you fight the boss with the minions. So it's a little bit of different setup, different phasing of how everything's played out. So after discussing the bosses, we've discussed all the weapons, we've discussed all the different weapon modifications. It's going to be a pretty decent season, I think. I was having a hard time starting out because I wasn't used to the mythic weapons. I wasn't used to using wings as a pretty solid mobility item. I think that should just about wrap up everything that we need to talk about starting out in the season. We do you definitely see what different weapons do come about from the vault or new weapons that Fortnite and Epic Games decides to come out with. But it seems that as of right now, this is a pretty new change to the game. Definitely something similar to the last story, Which it seems like with the story, speaking of which, seems like all the society enemies have just moved on and they're just gone. They don't exist anymore. And now it's time for the Greek gods to try and rule against us. So you take them down and for some reason just take down each other. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, enjoying the video, and getting some of this very, very important information in the game, which I think is going to be very helpful for you all. Remember to like and subscribe. Do the thing where you press the red button or whatever it is. All right, watch me win. Bye.